Welcome to the Afropolitan Podcast, hosted by Eche Emole, founder of Afropolitan. On the show, we chat with Afropolitans whose footprints form the foundation of systems dedicated to building the future of a bold and progressive Black community. In each episode, our guests share their working formulas, the hard facts about leaving familiar terrain, embracing the unknown, and staying relevant afterwards. Listen as we extract the blueprints of fearlessness, innovation, and progress.
Hey Afropolitans! In today's episode, we chat with Ngozi Dozie, co-founder of Carbon, a Pan-African digital bank based in Nigeria. Ngozi talks to us about the importance of transparency and access to loans in the ecosystem, and shares tips for new founders to navigate the regulatory landscape. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for stopping by the Afropolitan Podcast, Ngozi. Welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you. No, good. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you. Hi, where in the world are you right now?
Right now I'm in Palo Alto in California for the next few weeks at least.
We were making this joke about the man who built Africa remotely in this world.
Oh gosh, I don't know if we're there yet, but I'll join them.
You join them, no problem. We're waiting for you. So let's dive right in, shall we?
Yeah.
Can we talk about Carbon's mission and vision in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so we're a Pan-African digital bank, credit-led. And our goal really is to empower customers. We've had many names, but we settled on Carbon, and the rationale is, Carbon, like the element, is fundamental to human nature, or to human life, found everywhere, and also very flexible. You have Carbon as graphite, very soft and malleable. Carbon as diamond, hardest material in the world. And so that's our brand promise, to play a fundamental role in our customers' lives, to provide flexible solutions, and just to go everywhere with them. And so we try and go beyond banking, such that it's not about transactions, do you want a loan? It's like, what are you trying to achieve in life? And how can we empower you so that finance is not an issue? That's what's run through, all our products, our thesis, etc.
I saw one of your threads where it spoke to people tend to think that not too many people need loans, right? Especially like in the Nigerian ecosystem. Can you talk to us or talk to me about some of the data set or data points about, first of all, the type of loans you've been able to issue and why it's also important to be able to get access to those type of loans as well in the ecosystem? Yeah.
So you have, for context, we started off in Nigeria. Financial inclusion is about 45%, which means 45% of people actually have bank accounts. It doesn't mean that their needs are met by the financial services industry, but let's just start from that perspective. And it's disproportionately male as well.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of people, are not being served properly. And for a wide variety of reasons. Historically it's been, lack of data precludes me as a bank from lending to customers. It's a lot of nonsense, really, but that's the excuse. But things have changed. And what you now find is that the financial services have benefited from digitization, but have not passed that on to the customer. So you still find that, even to get a loan or credit card, these are very, very hard things to do for your typical customer. So much so that in Nigeria, only about 300,000 credit cards. You think about it, 100 million adults, only 300,000 credit cards, which is testament to the simplest credit product is so small. In the States, it's probably like a 70% penetration there.
Yeah.
So we started out giving, short-term loans. We started out giving, 30-day loans. Initially, it was 10,000 naira. At that time, it was $50. And what was funny was that the banks at the time, or bankers, were like, who borrows 10,000 naira? And I would say, your customers. So we started out that, we'll go up to, 9-12 months now, but we've extended up to savings, free credit reports. Our goal is, instead of initially want to give you a loan, now it's like, okay, why do you want a loan? And can we help you maybe save to that so you don't have to borrow You can use your own money. You can plan ahead, etc. So our latest offering right now is one we think is a crowd pleaser. Like every fintech in the world, we've launched the buy now, pay later product, Carbon Zero. But it's what the customers want. They want to spread payments at 0% financing and to access that at everywhere. Whether it's your e-commerce website or POS terminal, etc. And in this case, the merchant pays what is the effective interest. So that's what we're really pushing this year and going forward.
So on the timeline, I've noticed that you publish some of the numbers for carbon, right? And that level of transparency is something I wanted to talk to you about. Currently in the ecosystem, it seems like we tend to celebrate more of the fundraising achievements versus the execution on the back end. Can you talk to me about why that transparency is very important?
Yeah. So I think there were a few things, but the fundamental thing was to engender trust. Think about it as a challenger bank. One of the benefits is that, you're everywhere. You don't need branches. You don't need so many people. Yeah. But we're in a low trust environment. But people still, they want to know, okay, yes, you're lending me money. So you deposit money in my account, but that could be a scam. Nobody believes it. At the same time, I deposit money with you. Will you run away? There's no way I can come and find you. So our goal was, let us try and produce or engender as much trust with the customers to show, one, you see all these financial institutions that are regulated by the central bank, etc. We're doing exactly what they're doing. We're publishing the accounts. We're using KPMG right from the start, professional services firm. But we're also showing you exactly where our money is being spent. So, especially when you start off and you have high interest rates, it's like, okay, it's not that we're making ridiculous amounts of money and running off, we're pricing accordingly. We're being very transparent because, we're also asking customers to be transparent. We're asking customers, over a digital connection. Tell me, who you are, what you do, what's your salary, etc. So we're almost like reciprocating that trust as well, and then it then informs the kind of people you want to come into the company. You see, we're open. If you can't handle that kind of transparency because we're putting ourselves out there, then maybe this is not the right place for you. It's funny because we didn't think it was that big a deal, but that really resonated not just with the general public, but also with potential recruits. But this is someone that's doing something different. This is someone who has nothing to hide. If you have bad intentions, you walk into the shadow of darkness.
No, I know it resonated for me too, because obviously, I've been in the ecosystem a while. I see the numbers, the numbers people publish that are more, what I say, more complimentary, and the ones that are not complimentary, we don't talk about at all in the conversation. And I've always wondered, because I've worked in some American startups, right? I mean, when we would have all hands, they would literally tell you, hey, this is the health of the company. This is how much we have in the bank. This quarter or this month, we went down this way or we went up this way. And then that way, the whole team and the whole company or the team members are aligned towards guys, the numbers. So if money finish and you guys are all working, or that start happen. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Yeah. So
I would do that internally. So imagine if you've seen our numbers, we're not hiding it. I asked you for a bonus. Okay, sure. From where? Which profit did you see that you want the bonus to today?
I don't know. The thought that just came into my head was, I don't know if you watched the AFCON game with Egypt and Senegal, the last one.
I missed that. One.
There was a meme where the referee goes to Salah and says, "Do you want to referee the game? Like, take the whistle and ref." That's the image that just came into my head. No, because it's that way. It's like if you're asking for a bonus, you need to know where, the health of the company. So sometimes you have to align your asks to the reality of what is. So it's very important.
Correct.
Because what advice would you have for founders who are navigating this regulatory landscape, right? Especially the tech ecosystem. A lot of times it's like for new time founders now, there's this joke that's going around that's saying when they ask you who your competition is Mephi.
Right.
What advice would you give to new time founders as to how to navigate the regulatory framework?
Yeah. So I think the first point I'll make is that we sometimes read too much of the Silicon Valley, move fast, break things. So certainly from where we come from, financial services, you don't want these things to break. Right? These are people's money, right? So generally, regulation is not a bad thing, right? It gets mired in bureaucracy, but the intent is not bad. So I think the first thing is respect the regulation and try and understand what it's trying to do. I think sometimes, yes, good regulation, there's bad regulation. Sometimes it's poor regulation. But at least trying to understand why this thing has been, set up X years ago. And then look, I think there's a lot of patience. What we found, and this is across different markets, Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, is there are good and bad people in each of these regulators. There are people who are they don't want you to move faster, but they're tired. You have supporters in there who are also saying, look, I know this is a bad law, etc. So try and find those people. Regulators can turn a blind eye. So we talk about potential sandboxes, etc. Not many regulators have that, but with a decent relationship, you can be allowed to do things with the blessing, not the explicit permission. So I think it literally just engage, find out, go. I mean, we've literally had, central bank governor, I won't mention the country, say, I need you to come here to this country because what the banks are doing is terrible. I want them to really face competition. That's a central bank governor, right? Literally calling, my co-founder, Chijoke, to say, where you guys? I need you guys here. So I think it's healthy engagement, but also, try and push things to the edge as well. We're not lawyers and bureaucrats. We're meant to challenge the existing core to build a better world.
You already know. I believe in that strongly. You already know. So a lot of founders tend to struggle with the fundraising process, especially even in the African ecosystem. I know these days it looks like every other day there's a new fundraising announcement, but I'm sure you remember the days when to get one kobo, you have to bring your mother's brother's DNA for funding, right? But I think it seems like it's gone a little bit better to fundraise from an African tech ecosystem perspective. But what advice would you have for founders as they go embark on that fundraising journey?
So I've been there, and I think the spigot is turned on, but I'll caveat that and say for certain businesses, and this thing goes in cycles. You're the sexy fintech today or tech company. Next year, it's like, no, that was last year now. You're not spending the month. So these fundraising cycles, they change. The advice that is really pertinent, and it's very hard to swallow when you're looking for money, is you really need to make sure that you have the right investor that's aligned with your business. Now, when you're looking for cash and you're thinking, all I need is cash, you will take whatever is in front of you.
We'll worry about alignment later, I beg.
So cash. I tell people like one of the mistakes we made, very first investor, we didn't know what valuation was. Now things have changed. The whole YC, a lot more education amongst investors and founders as well. At the time, we were lucky. We raised 10 million in equity in 2015, $30 million pre-money valuation, very high. Now, whatever you call it, now you don't know whether it's pre-seed, pre-acorn, post-seed, whatever. But that was our first institutional fundraise. And
mustard seed.
You know what I mean? I can't keep up. But the point was that, in truth, we didn't even think about the valuation, right? It was quickly done. We didn't do much analysis. It was actually too high a valuation. If I could go back in time now, I would have said, you know what? Make this a $10 million pre-money valuation. Give me $1 million in equity, right? And give me $8 million in debt to fund my loan book. We just use equity to fund our loan book, right? So what does that mean now? When I go out to fundraise again, right? We had a 40 million post-money valuation, 30 million pre, 10 million equity check, 40 million post-money. Everyone was like, 40 million. We have seen your mates now, they were at 30 million, which was the case at the time. Neither we nor the investor actually thought about the future fundraise dynamics.
Cycles, yeah.
Right? So it's not just the investor, but it's also the structure of the deal. It's also what's the strategy? Does this make sense? Right? Do you need to potentially get somebody that has networks in a particular field or country? These are things that you can do, before the first check is in. Being more targeted and strategic in the conversations you're having as you're fundraising. I know the classic trope. When you're fundraising, just ask for advice, right? When you want advice, ask for money.
So even for us, when we were raising the round that we're currently raising, right, we got advice from an investor who says, hey, we plan on raising 5 million for the network state. He said, raise 1 mil and meet the metrics, and you can come back to the market again, and the market can reward you for the metrics that you've raised. Yeah. Now, I've also come to understand, especially with conversation from other founders in the ecosystem, which is there's still that scarcity mindset that me and you talked about earlier, right? Which is like, let's collect the one that we can collect now, or tomorrow is not promised. Tomorrow is not promised, right? And I'm like, if you're not careful, if you fall into that delusion of like, oh, we raised 20 million. 20 million costs with $20 million cost responsibilities. It's not your private money, right? And I think it's that understanding of saying, hey, the best investors you can actually ever have for your business are your customers, right? I think it's very important for people to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. The other thing as well on investors, which we've fallen into this trap, is you've got to stay true to what you believe your vision is, right? Yeah. Again, with that scarcity mindset, you're like, whatever they want me to say, I'm going to say it. I'm going to do my, do gymnastics with my business model. And we found that, because this is an investor that has, $1 billion assets under management, you now think that this individual that you're speaking to knows all the answers. They don't. You're in the hot seat. You know exactly what works, what doesn't work in your particular region. Yeah, they may have seen it in different markets, etc. But you've got to stay true and say, please, man, don't be annoyed. Or don't be annoyed, but I think you're not making sense right now. For our markets, for India, US, I think those models are great. But here, no, come, I'll teach you. But till then, no problem.
And it's very important too, like you said, you need investors who are aligned, right? And I think some people, you want the money, but the investor isn't aligned. I'll tell you a quick short story of what happened in our case. So we went to pitch an investor, and then he says to me, I like your idea. I'm like, okay, cool, great. He's like, but your whole pitch is wrong. I'm like, let's get feedback. And then he's like, you want to digitize government services. I was like, I was like, it's okay, sir. It's okay. Please give me my deck back.
No, sir, I don't.
I don't, sir. And it dawned on me that he assumed that I was trying to replace physical pen and paper with computers.
Right.
I'm like, that's not gonna work in our case. Yeah. Sorry, but thank you. So COVID happens, right? And a lot of us are forced to sit with our choices during COVID. What were some of the operational challenges with operating Carbon with COVID?
So we're at a point in time where we're growing quite nicely. We're recruiting significantly. So I think the challenges are in people and in infrastructure. So on the infrastructure side, which is less potent, we run a call center in Lagos and in Owerri. And so, centralized Wi-Fi, calls, everything's all set up. Everything's recorded. So now having to say, okay, everybody now has to make calls from wherever they are. And, many of our staff, live in areas with really shitty service, right? Yeah. So what was amazing was people just doing whatever they did need to do to just get their calls in. I want to go outside church. I want to go to my mother's house, etc. So you saw the best of people in that regard. I think, for us, we called it early, and we're able to, we go investors to everybody. We give everyone, I think it was 50 to 100K to go and do some, panic buying and stop food, toilet roll, whatever. And then we push everybody out. I think where we have struggled is in remote working. And you almost have to rebuild the culture. Because the whole culture was based on, we're all meeting, we're face-to-face, etc. Now you have to rebuild the culture. The people who were recruited during COVID never met anybody and have different expectations. And what we've seen is that the people who can work remotely, they know what it takes, they must turn up, and there are those who, it's like when you if you grow up in a Nigerian family and it's very closeted, and then one day you leave the house and you go to university, people react two ways. Either they go up and they're like, oh, finally freedom, I can manage my life, etc., or they go buck wild, right? And I think we have that issue where there are people who, remote is fantastic. You can really manage your time and get the work done, and you save on the 2 to 4 hours commute. And there are those that unfortunately, and that's a minority, thankfully, who just misbehave, right? And then there's another set that where it's confusing. It's confusing. It's not ideal. They thrive off in-person meetings with people. Well, it's also we believe that ultimately remote is here to stay, but there has to be a hybrid solution because otherwise, until we get to that Ready Player One, where we're all, we're all in the metaverse, etc. We're children of flesh and blood,
This metaverse is still a little bit away.
Yeah. On the customer side, I think what was very interesting because, we talk about trust with your customers. This was, a pandemic, global pandemic only happens once every century, right? So you can't really prepare for it. So what happens? The country is being shut down and you're saying, oh my God, people are not going to be able to pay their loans. We're not sure what's going to happen. So what do? We reduced loans that were being disbursed to, right? It makes sense from the company's perspective, from a financial perspective. Now, if you now think about it from your customer's perspective, I'm in a global pandemic, things are going crazy. This is my bank, Carbon, that I love, that has helped me all the time. In my time of need, in that once in a century, they've abandoned me. So you lose customer trust. And then what's worse, we're a very vocal nation now. So everyone now starts going to social media and say, last time I got 100K from Carbon, they gave me 20K instead when I renewed your loan. Now, when others see that, who are about to pay their loan, they're like, my money will reduce. let me wait for further notice. So I think it was a great lesson. I guess this is why some of the great brands. It's not because they are smarter. It's just because they've been there longer and have gone through different cycles and now have a better sense as to who their customers are, what their customers want, etc. So that was a great learning moment for us because we pride ourselves on being customer centric. I think we could have been a lot more customer centric in how we dealt with that. I mean, like many people, we panicked. We didn't know what was going to happen. But in retrospect, 2020, of course, we would have done things differently, I think.
Definitely. And even piggybacking off that conversation, there's been a lot of conversation about retaining talent, right? What would you say some of the challenges that you're faced at Carbon, not only with recruiting talent, but also retaining talent, especially when some of that talent wants to japa, right? Like there's just been a consistent japa agenda.
Live. It's worse now. So I think there's a good and bad side, right? So the bad side as a recruiter of talent is before there was a exit barrier. Before you jump out, you need to get that Canadian visa or the UK visa, right?
Yes.
Before they'll leave you. Now these guys are saying, like the international firms are saying, oh, you don't have to come here. Stay in Nigeria. No, it's come here, right? We're remote. So all of a sudden now, it's easier for talent to move. And that's a great thing for the ecosystem, right? What does it mean for us? It means that we now have to really work hard at really meeting your goals, your career goals, to learn, to progress, etc., and to get compensated properly for the services. It's an international marketplace right now. So that's good and bad. The good side, is that also now we too also have an international marketplace. So we have, I think, people in 7 countries right now. Argentina, UK, Canada, Nigeria, the States. So I think net is a good thing. I'm not one of those who, we have a brain drain, but I think that, I think this is, one of the things I like about the whole Afropolitan vibe. My brother Chioge says, Africans, we want to soar. We want to excel. And I think that given that Japa is a net positive in the same way that we're getting more remittances. We're getting 25 billion a year. Imagine if everyone Japas now and it's now 100 billion. And then you're also pulling people, this place is sweet. Yes. I think it's great. I think it's just letting the talent, the knowledge, disseminate. I think it's net good. We'll suffer in the short term, bro. But net,
long term,
I think it's not a bad thing.
Because even if you can't japa physically, like you said, you can japa online, right? And that's the offer that you're looking to make here.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about things like, whether it's, platforms like Twitter, I have learned so much from Twitter. That the other day, actually, I had to pay for Twitter Blue, not because I needed the features. I was like, I need to give you guys something back because what you have done for me.
It can't be free.
It can't be free. So I think, it's exciting times, for people, you think about the whole education space. We need to move. Do you need to go to university to get knowledge? I don't think so. I don't think so. Certainly not a local university. I mean, it's out there in the open whether they want to go to university or not.
Definitely. It's very important that we embrace a lot of these technological advances because it can literally help us leapfrog our current success score. Because on the current pace that we're in, by the time we catch up, they've already gone to Mars. So it's time to move. You know, so because everyone gets to deal with failure at some point. What would you say was your first encounter with failure when you started out as an entrepreneur? How did you deal with it, and what did that experience teach you?
Failure. So I think the one that pains me the most, still pains, is 2012. We set up a coffee chain, Cafe Neo, and it was a coffee shop, a la Starbucks, etc.
Was it in VI?
It was in VI, it was in Yaba, it was in Struve, it was in Kid. We had 12 locations at one point.
Yeah, I think I went to one.
Yeah. And, prior to Cafe Neo, in Lagos, if you want to meet somebody, you're either going to meet them at some expensive hotel that will look down upon you, or in the office or the person's house. There was no third space. And so the coffee was almost like an excuse to meet, but it literally was that third space. So it was great decor. We had, African music in the background. And ultimately, it didn't work for a couple of reasons. One, we started out, with full, locations that were, what's the phrase anyway? Out of office. So literally we were paying for gen, we were paying for, all the good stuff, water. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do was provide this cafe-like services to that it was meant to be affordable luxury, right? To students, young workers who couldn't pay. So you get people who would come to they'd come, they'll bring their water, they'll bring their
own food. Thank you for the space.
You're lucky to buy a 500 naira latte, actually 9 months. So ultimately, we went through rough times. We pivoted to just go in office. So all these high-rise office buildings, and we had just turned around when COVID happened, right? And then all the offices shut down. So a couple of things. I mean, why is it failure? Oh, it's failure because it shut down. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Why the lessons were, in many ways, the product was too early for its time. Just in terms of infrastructure, we should have gone in office first, but then you wouldn't have had that third space feel. And the other thing as well is that, and it's a critical thing for all of us, is sometimes you can build a kick-ass product and customers will not pay.
Yeah.
Right? That's one where you're like, come on, let's support this business now. Just buy one drink. You bring your water, you bring your thermos flask inside.
Yeah.
I think that's a very pertinent lesson, which is why we're trying to build a sustainable business, because when the investor dollars dry up, it's just you and your customers, right? Wow. Right now, there are many businesses, where the consumer is enjoying, thanks to these wonderful investors that are saying, take. And, we all go in cycles, business cycles, and at some point, those dollars will stop. So in 2008, 2016, 2012, you need to make sure that you have a sustainable model that can ride out that wave.
It's funny. I don't know if you listen to this podcast called the All In Podcast with Shamat David Sachs.
Religiously.
I was listening to I think maybe it was the last episode, and they were talking about what some of the economic downturns could mean for startups who are depending on VC funds.
Right.
And he was talking about default alive versus default dead. I don't know if you heard that, and it's very important to understand what that meant, because I've also seen a situation where you might be running a sustainable business where you might not even need VC funding. But because the next person has collected VC funding, you will now start to say, should I go and collect VC funding? And it's like, no. The ultimate goal is to have your customers validate your product. It's not about raising the most funds, because, again, you have to justify that raise, right? So it's something that we hope that, like, through podcasts like this, we can educate founders who are coming to understand that the game is actually you and your customers. The VCs are your partners, your investors are your partners on that journey, Yeah.
I mean, it goes to a problem that I see is success is being measured by fundraise rather than the metrics of the business itself, and that's a dangerous place to be in,
Because in Nigeria, they'll say when the breakfast is served, everybody will eat it. Everybody will eat it, So
the consumer will be the winner.
Everybody will eat it for sure. So, Ngozi, can you tell me, what are some of the books that have had a profound impact in your life?
So my all-time favorite book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I mean, I read that book at least once a year. And each time you read it, there's something new. But the main story is one, whatever you want. I mean, there's a great quote in the book that basically says, if you want something really badly, the whole universe conspires to help you get it. And it's like conspires. It's like if you really want it that badly, things will just work out,
Yes.
So the key is to want it. And that's a huge one. One that was very formative for me early on was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Richard Covey. Literally changed my life. I remember. I think the first habit is be proactive. The way I take it is, control your destiny. So you can react or you can say, actually, that really pissed me off. But instead of shouting like an animal, I'm going to get vengeance in 5 years' time. Or I'm going to be the bigger person. And another one, which is more there's a book, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. I think it's meant to be like the second most quoted book in the world after the Bible. And it's a hypothetical prophet that talks about different issues, children, parenthood, etc. But beautifully written. And something I think about a lot, he talks about children. I mean, I've got 3 boys now, so if you think you have control of your life, wait till you have children. And one of the quotes he has is, and I'm paraphrasing, basically, children come through you, but they're not of you. They stay with you, but they don't belong to you. And so, especially, children, I now see how my parents look at me, where we're just different contexts, different
personality,
everything. So if you think you're going to copy and paste how you grew up and then impose on them,
it's not going to work.
You're not going to make it.
It's funny, going back to the parents' angle, because I'm at my parents' house now, so we're just talking earlier. And I was just reflecting on, it's funny how the bets you take on yourself change the type of conversations you now have with your parents. Because I was just supposed to be a lawyer, right? Like my parents, my dad was a lawyer, family's lawyer. And I remember at the time when you don't know what to do with your life, you're looking to them for that guidance, and you're like, look, this is the secure path, this is the safe path.
Correct.
But I took the path less traveled. And maybe like 3-4 years out of, I think I finished law school in 2018, so we're in 2022. So 4 years later, right? It's those bets you've made on yourself. Where now they're like, we're very sure that you're going to figure it out. In fact, you're figuring it out, but we're very sure that you're going to figure it out because 4 years after you're still doing it. It was interesting because I was reflecting earlier about there are types of bets you have to be able to take on yourself, even when the rest of the world is not sure about what you're doing.
Correct.
Sometimes those bets will compound. And going back to The Alchemist, if you want it bad enough, it will conspire to get to you.
No, definitely. I don't know if you know Fred Swaniker of African Leadership Foundation, but he had a great quote. And he talks about how, as an entrepreneur, sometimes your worst enemies are those who love you the most, your friends and family. Yes. Because they're too protective. Like, you will fail now. And you need, sometimes they just they can hold you down inadvertently. I need to set yourself free. And again, just ride the wave.
There was a book, I don't know if you read the book, but one of the person I really follow a lot is Naval Ravikant. So he talks about the guide to happiness and wealth. And the day it crystallized for me when he said, you're going to have to risk failure and humiliation, right? And then if it works out at scale, you win. But you can lose, right? But you're going to actually going to have to risk your name, your reputation, humiliation, all of that. And I think the minute I understood it, that's when I started to understand why entrepreneurs get back on the horse, even when they fail and fail and fail again. Because it's you're saying like that one failure will not define you and define your life, right? So it's being able to move past even the failed startup and say, okay, you know what, we're going to move again, right? And it takes tremendous courage to keep on putting yourself in that arena over and over again,
But imagine how liberating that thing is, right? Where you're like, what's worse, I'll fail and move on.
What's what? I failed already.
I failed already. It's great,
that's no longer a fear because it's already happened.
Exactly.
So, Ngozi, if the only thing left in the world was to read a book about your life, what would the title of the book be?
It will go along the lines of be patient, good things come to those who wait. I like it. It would be because I'm not who I was. I was very shy. I was short. I couldn't even eat in.
Wait, you were short?
Yeah, I was short growing up.
I would never been able to tell.
No, I had a growth spurt. And it was always that. And I was very nerdy, so it was always like you're seeing all these cool guys, etc. You're like, hey, this girl, will she talk to me? You had no game, etc. For many years, actually, up until I began working with Chijoke, my brother.
Yeah,
I had no idea what I wanted to do, so I was just collecting nice jobs, doing a nice resume, but I didn't know what the hell I was going to do.
Yeah.
But so it's like if you wait and you're just tenacious.
Yeah.
If either you get what you're looking for, or you'll enjoy the journey. Now I'm wonderful family. I went off a bit before. Now I have a hot Aisha that is my partner.
Boss babes.
Boss babes, man. Boss is bossing us around. Yeah. And then again, the more you engage, in business, and I think it's true for many founders. You want to take over the world, but then you then see that it's more than just the accolades, the metrics, etc. It really is that impact that hopefully you set out to do and you don't lose your way.
Yes, it's interesting because again, even going back to the whole Naval thing, at the end of the thread, he says, "And one day when you think you've achieved success, you might realize that's not what you actually wanted." Right. Cool. And I remember when he came to the end of that, it struck me so much because I felt like he was subbing me, like directly at me. Like it was like, I was like, bro, how can you sub me? Are you listening? And it was important because it then made me say, okay, if I reach the end of the road and I realize that's not actually what I wanted, what do I actually want? Because all these other things will accrue to you as you become successful, as you're working your purpose. But what do you actually want? I think there was a quote. He says, a fit body, a calm mind, a house full of love. These things cannot be bought. They must be earned. And it just struck me as so interesting because a lot of the times I've seen, even in my own personal family life, where I saw people accrue wealth. But when it came to the end of the day, there was no house full of love. There was no calm mind. There was none of that. And you're not supposed to say, what North Star do you want? Because, if it's the money, they had the money, but they didn't have all these other things that are important. And so it's been very informative in saying, okay, as you build, as you grow, as you embark on this journey, don't lose sight of some of these other goals because you can wake up one day and you might have had the money and you're still alone.
I mean, after this conversation, I'll probably journal that because I can't answer that question right now. And it's one of the questions where you don't want to even be honest with yourself. Right. So it's a deep one.
No, definitely. Ngozi, so we always end the podcast by asking all our guests, right? What does being Afropolitan mean to you?
I mentioned earlier this point about Africans just wanting to soar. Like a bird has wings, so it must fly. I think Afropolitan for me is just, there's a certain destiny. It's just like, let me just achieve my destiny. That's what Afropolitan is that I've got the innate ability, I've got the innate drive. All I'm looking for is the opportunity. And when I have, so basically, when you marry me being the Afropolitan and my opportunity, then I will soar. That's it. There's an inevitability about it. But just give me the opportunity.
Give us the opportunity and we'll take it from there. Ngozi, I can't thank you enough for giving me the time. I know you finally stumbled on the DM I sent. I think I sent it like that several times. Like, thank you for responding. But we'd love to have you on the podcast because the essential idea for this, for even our listeners, is we say that in the past, a lot of wisdom and history and knowledge were passed down through oral tradition, right?
Yeah.
But we never got to preserve it. And what we're saying is podcasting is our new oral tradition. And what we're seeking to do is preserve that wisdom and that knowledge and that feedback, not just for an audience for today, for the audience of the future. And it's very important because we want to be able to not just have these conversations, but to honor the people who are in the arena, the builders, people who know what it feels like to even fail or even succeed or even fail again, right? Because it's very important, because to achieve what we're trying to build here with the network state, it's going to take the builders and the people who walk those paths, even though there's no guarantees, they don't know where the next, thing is going to come from, but being comfortable with the unknown, right? And it's going to take builders to get that done. So thank you again for coming by the podcast.
No, thanks a lot. I think what you're doing is fantastic. There's a phrase, one of these Greek philosophers, that it basically goes, either do what deserves to be written or write what deserves to be read. Just choose one. And I think the narrative, telling our stories, so that even amongst us, so we don't just copy and paste from Silicon Valley, Asia. We have our own issues, we have our own solutions, we have our own context. Let's learn from each other. So I think what you're doing is fantastic, and grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Please, what was the quote again? You said, "Do what deserves to be written."
No, do what deserves to be written, or write what deserves to be read, or podcast what deserves to be listened to. We can remix this thing more.
Please, we can remix it. It doesn't hurt at all. But again, because thank you for stopping by the Afropolitan Podcast. I hope you have a great one.
No, fantastic. Thanks, man.
Thank you for listening to the Afropolitan Podcast. We are building the future of a progressive Black community. To join our community, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Afropolitan. Be sure to join our Discord and Clubhouse community by clicking on the link tree on our Instagram page. See you on social.